Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 55th take. I am Bear Duplessis, your host as always, live from the Casa Cueva studios of Euless, Texas. So excited to bring to you our 55th take tonight. It's been a fantastic week. I hope everyone enjoyed their week, smoked some great, awesome cigars. It is Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. The next time you'll see us for our 56th take will be post-Thanksgiving, so I hope everyone has a great holiday week. And it is with my esteemed pleasure that I'm able to welcome in our 55th takes guest of honor this evening. He was I was very fortunate that he was available this holiday weekend, and I was really excited that he agreed to sit down with me tonight. Really interesting guy in the industry. I've had a ton of respect for him ever since he, he's been around for longer than I have in this industry, but I've had a ton of respect for him forever, what he's done. And I was just so excited to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with him. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome in our guest, Mr. Andrew Brennan of Patoro Cigars. Andrew, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, bud?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I am doing sensational. I am about ready to light up a Patoro Series P. One of my favorites from the brand that you now work for, and it really does the body good, man. What are you smoking? I saw you already have something lit up.
I'm smoking our Grand Añejo Reserve, the red label.
Awesome. So, what was the first Patoro that you actually tried? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but the first one that I remember smoking quite a bit was the Series P that you're smoking, the orange band.
Mm-hmm.
Orange is my go-to color. I'm attracted to it. Caught my eye in the humidor, and I remember grabbing that. But I would guess that I probably smoked one before that and just don't remember it. But the Series P is definitely what I first started smoking. And then certainly when I joined the company, I was smoking a lot of the Series P.
Yeah, I see you sporting the Fighting Illini sweater this evening, as well as you said that you got the Bears game on in the background.
Our basketball program, not our football program.
So you got the Bears game going on in the background. So obviously you're a Bears fan.
Yeah.
I'm a Packers fan, as everybody knows this. We won't go into our rivalry, but how's that? How are they looking tonight against we can both agree the Vikings are terrible. So
they do suck, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
The Bears are looking good right now. The defense is definitely keeping us in the game. We're winning 14-6. I think I saw.
When you guys executed the Khalil Mack trade and I was just beside myself with worry. And I have a couple of friends who are also Packers fans, and they're like, dude, you're paranoid. Oh my God, you're the worst fan ever. Like, nothing's going to happen. It's one player, blah, 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 blah. So game one, what happens, Khalil Mack takes him out for a half, sends every Packers fan, chills of fear running through their spine. And I get on Facebook. I'm like, I just hate to say I'm right at this point in time, but I'm right, man. It was absolute pandemonium for Packers fans.
Pretty good down here in Chicago at that halftime.
Oh, put the fear of God in Packer Nation there.
Out in his State Farm Superman cape in that second half. So,
oh man, the second time we meet later this year is going to be that's going to be an epic showdown, man.
Right.
So I mean, we're playing terrible right now. You guys are playing awesome, but it's always a barn burner.
You guys.
So one of the things that I was really interested in talking to you about, as we kind of shift here, I want to go ahead and segue into a little more cigar talk. Now, when I first kind of ran into you on the professional scene when it came into cigars, you were running the sales department for La Flor Dominicana, which at the time, or it still is, one of my favorite cigar companies. I'm a huge fan of them, so that's why you kind of got on my radar and everything. And in my opinion, and I said this before we went live on the show tonight, in my opinion, you took a pretty well-established brand in LFD and really took them to where they became a staple in every humidor that I ever went in. Like when I first started smoking LFD back in the early 2000s, there were but like I had a couple of new shops that I knew where they were at, would gravitate towards those. But it seemed like to me, once you kind of took the helm, they were everywhere. And so I kind of wanted to, I was interested in asking you, like, what was the specific challenge? And I know it's like we just sold more cigars. That's kind of the obvious, but I mean, what was the challenge as far as taking a well-established brand that had built up a lot of credibility and really emphasizing it and making it become a staple?
Um, that's a very interesting question, Bear. I would say I'm very flattered of the amount of credit you just gave me. I think Lito would roll his eyes at what you just said, but I mean, I was a lucky guy in a lucky spot. You know, I think if you look at the humidors or the cigar industry 10 or 12 years ago, it was really different. And I think what I brought to LaFleur when I was promoted, and I think was maybe a higher level of consistency than they had before. They were fairly young at that point in time in terms of sales reps. We had 3 or 4 when I first started. I think I was their 4th. You know, and we eventually grew that to 8, and we were able to keep reps more consistent and on more consistent paths and visiting shops more often within their territories. And there were territories that we struggled keeping reps in, but I think a lot of that you mentioned had to do with the consistency of retailers seeing the sales reps, putting faces with LaFleur, hearing the brand more. I mean, Lito, you know, and Inez and now Tony down there have always made great product. So it never really was a product issue. It was more of just being a consistent face in those humidors.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, that goes without questions. You mentioned that Lito might be rolling his eyes at you at my statement, but
He rolled his eyes at 90% of what I said. So,
but I mean, the truth of the matter is, I mean, like I said, I've been a fan of their cigars forever, and like you said, the product was never the issue, is never the issue with them. They make amazing cigars, and it was just interesting to me that it had to be, because I feel like there's several different challenges in this business, and we're going to get to another one of those here in a moment when we talk about your next stop after LaFleur. But you know, there's that starting point, that launching point. Then you become a known name, and it's getting it over the hump to where it's either shaking off a stigma or taking it to the next level. And then there's a level above that, which is where you've become a staple in everybody's humidor, the Fuentes, the Monte Cristos, etc. So it's an interesting dynamic, which leads me into the next question about your next stop, which is La Polina. So you leave La Florida Dominicana, and then you go completely opposite. You went from helping to build this staple to now you are launching a brand and starting from scratch in a lot of different ways. Now, again, great product, great backing, great family, great story. You know, I think you kind of hit, you know, you hit all the the touch points and the feeling points and everything. But what was that experience like, going from someone that everyone had heard of to someone that nobody had heard of, or relatively few?
I remember my very good friend, Mr. Herklotz, up in Nat Sherman. The look on his face when I told him, well, he was with Davidoff at the time. When I told him I was leaving Lito and going to La Polina, it was, I can't explain it, but I'll never forget the look he gave me. It was a look of concern and question for my mental stability. That's for sure. But at that point in time, you know, La Polina wasn't completely a startup. They were out in the field. They had been out for maybe a year or two prior to me joining the company. They had some success with certain lines and certain brands, as a lot of companies do. Bill has a phenomenal story. If you ever get the opportunity to sit down with him, he is one of the coolest guys to. I mean, the stories that he would tell me when it was just me and him were amazing.
I did. I actually had the opportunity at this past year's IPCPR, and you're absolutely right. Just a consummate gentleman, incredible stories in the brief time that I spent with him, but it was awesome.
He's awesome. And Courtney, a good friend of mine at the time, we had our troubles, as some people listening or not listening may know. We have kissed and made up since then. But she has done at the time, she did a phenomenal job with a lot of the marketing aspects and positioning La Plina in a certain way. And I remember thinking at the time they just needed a little. The only piece they were missing was a guy like me that knew retailers in multiple states and sales reps, brokers in multiple states, and can really get a kind of a movement going on it. You know, like I said, with the La Flor Dominicana was more of that consistency. You know, they were using all brokers, but there wasn't a guy like me in charge of sales or a consistent face in the humidors, in the shops. And, you know, certainly when I joined them, it was different. You know, when I would look at monthly sales reports, the numbers at the bottom were missing a few digits from what I was used to. And as my career has gone on, those numbers keep getting smaller for a lot of reasons. But La Plina all the pieces were there. They just needed a little oomph.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that at the time they were doing brokers. Now you made it. So when you came in, you made a decision that was really interesting to me as well. And I keep saying interested. I feel like I'm Mike Greenberg at this point. But you made a decision to very early in the company's history to go in-house with sales reps, to make the commitment to a sales force that was in-house strictly. I think you still had a couple of brokers, but you went predominantly in-house pretty early on, which is well, I'll just let you talk about it. What led to that decision as far as going from away from the broker into a more in-house dominated sales force?
Well, I feel that in-house reps. I'm not going to hesitate. Fuck it. In-house reps will always be able to support a brand better than a broker will. Always. There's no question about it. Now, if you have a great broker and you have a bad sales rep, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, inevitably somebody will jump on somewhere and go, Andrew was wrong because he said this and look at this.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm talking about if you have good people, right? An in-house person will always do better for the brand than a broker will, simply because they have one brand to focus on as opposed to 3, 4, or sometimes, you know, more than 5. So the obvious problem is the cost of an in-house sales rep is obviously tremendously higher. And it's the way I look at it is more of an investment, right? Because you're putting a lot of money out there to begin with, and you're not always seeing those returns right away. Especially in our business, if you're growing a brand properly, in my opinion, sometimes it takes a little longer. And you know, when you have a broker and you're paying a percentage on sales, you're only paying when you get those sales. So it's obviously financially in a better interest for the company, which is why you see a lot of smaller companies go that route, because it's easier on their checkbook. But we were in a fortunate position at La Plina, and there was Mr. Paley had some strong financial backing and was willing to invest it. He didn't invest it willingly. You know, I had to build a case for that. I mean, that was a big transition for them at the time. And you got to find the right people. You know, La Polina was a small brand. Like you said earlier, not a lot of people had heard of it. And I feel that if you put a young sales rep in with a young brand that nobody's ever heard of and a young rep that nobody's ever heard of, you're not going to get as far as you would with a Paul Costo, who's obviously, you know, that I put in that position.
Absolutely. One of the best.
He's the best. There's no doubt. And I was lucky to do that at the time. You know, those situations don't always happen where you're able to get a guy that has been in the field for 10 years, has strong connections, is well liked by all retailers. Now, when Paul walks in with a La Polina, he's going to do a lot better in that territory than Andrew Brennan, who just, you know, was selling wallpaper last week, and now he's knocking on doors in Texas. So you have to find the right guy or gal, and you know, that's different. It worked out for us.
Yeah, and that was something that, and you and I actually talked about this on the other show that I co-host along with Will Cooper, Primetime Special Edition. I had talked about how La Polina has always had a remarkable skill at acquiring amazing talent, and everyone from you, Paul, some of the people that are in place today, Courtney, you mentioned earlier as well. I mean, they've had a history of just acquiring fantastic. You know, Clay is still there, Clay Roberts. You know, unbelievable people that have a great passion for this industry, work incredibly hard, have incredible work ethics, and it's worked out for them. You know, some people have come and moved on and so forth, but I've always been kind of amazed at the talent that's kind of gone through that place. That being said, go ahead.
Those kind of people that you're talking about, like myself and Paul, and certainly Courtney and Clay, and you can go to other companies and say something very similar. But you know, I think with a dynamic personality like Bill, and there are flaws there too. Don't get me wrong. You know, there's definitely some flaws in his personality, but I'm talking about his style. When you meet him, you know, he really brings you in. And then when you hear the story of La Polina and his grandfather and CBS, and then how he got the brand back, and then what he's done since then, you know, that attracts a certain personality, in my opinion. And if you look at other companies in our industry, you'll see that same thing, that there are certain people and certain stories that attract other similar strong personalities. Because I mean, at least for me, I've always liked to work with dynamic people, interesting people, things like that. I was going to say a bad word, but I decided not.
Oh, it's totally okay. I'm not regulated, so you can drop whatever. So you mentioned the great Michael Herklotz a moment ago, and you actually had some choice words to tell me, because on a subject of another show that I did with Will Cooper, he was omitted from the list, not by choice. He didn't come across to either of us, and you let me have it on that.
You made a pretty big mistake.
Absolutely, and I totally apologize for it, because I completely agreed with you. So you have a very special relationship with him, and Michael's someone that I've since met and had and also another great sit down at IPCPR this past year. A fine individual, and what he's done for this industry is, you know, second to none in certain circles, for sure. What would you say has been the biggest thing that you've learned from someone like Michael? And I'd like to know, have you taught Michael Herklotz anything?
Have I taught Mr. Herklotz anything? I taught him how to make a better Manhattan.
A worthwhile skill for sure. So how does Andrew Brennan make a Manhattan?
You know, the one thing about I forget about the vermouth and the cherry and all that shit, and I just put bourbon on ice. But seriously, what I would say I've learned from Mike, and maybe definitely have not always applied it to my career, myself, or my daily life. But the one thing I've always admired about him is his ability to. He's got a lot of discipline, and I've lived my life and my career with not as much discipline. And knowing the answer and knowing the right way to do things and say things doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't actually do them. And his discipline that he applies to his daily life, his daily routine, the discipline he puts on himself to ensure that he makes family time and personal time aside from our industry. When you travel like we do, it can be very easy to fall into some rabbit holes in this industry. And, he's done a very, very disciplined job of making sure he separates a lot of things. But the discipline in maybe not saying exactly what is on his mind at that point in time. And, instead of saying, well, that was fucking stupid, you dumb jagoff. Like a B might say, Michael might say, that's an interesting perspective, Bear. I wonder if we can look at it a different way. And although he's thinking what I said, the discipline that he maintains while still being a very likable guy, that's the one thing I've learned from him, admired about him, and am still to this minute very jealous of, because I've just not always been able to not say what's on my mind.
That was the impression that I got from him. It's interesting that you said that, because that was the impression that I got from him as well, is that he, like you said, instantly likable. Drew, kind of, magnet.
Likable, and I said that too, because when I first met him, I hated him. I really did. I thought he was a total fucking jagoff. Like, listen, like one thing I laugh about all the time is I could name a list of 20 people who I consider actual friends in the cigar industry, who I hated when I first met them. And I can almost assure you that anybody who's ever met AB hates my guts when they first meet me. And that's not, that sucks. Obviously I'm doing something wrong because I'm giving off a wrong impression. Like when people say, well, you got to get to know the guy. And that's true to a point, but that's also kind of like saying, well, he's an asshole, but if you can put up with his level of assholeness, he's actually a good guy.
There are people like that. Just
I'm one of them, I can assure you, unfortunately. But there's a long list of guys that I really didn't care for when I first met him. And I think that's kind of sad when I look back on it, because, this industry, when you're a brand developer, a brand manager like Michael, or a brand owner like Pete Johnson or Lito, or just a sales guy like myself, you have a split second to make a first impression. And usually people are making this judgment on us without, and I'm not so sure they should, but if I walk into a cigar shop and there's 12 guys sitting there smoking a cigar, and I've never met them, I don't know the owner, I don't know the person behind the counter or in the humidor, I have a split second to figure out how to get these 12 to 14 people to like me, to talk to me, and then hopefully to buy from me. And I have to do that pretty quickly. And if I say one wrong word, or if I'm dressed funny, like Michael did many years ago, Or if I'm wearing all white, like Lito does, or if I'm tatted like Pete and I walk into a shop and they don't like tats. I mean, these people are making decisions very quickly without considering, what we're doing or what we're going for. And I'm not saying they should. A good salesperson should always have an appointment when they walk in, but that first impression you make on the cigar industry, we judge people on that all the time. And, it's not always fair. And listen, we do it to retail shop owners. We do it to consumers. Obviously, it's not just our industry either, but
of course, first impressions matter. They do, and it's like you said, it's a skill that salespeople like, because and I'm one as well. That's that's my career. I sell and I talk for a living, pretty much constantly, day in and day out. And it's interesting. You have to really pick up on a person's vibe pretty quickly and assess how you're going to approach that particular person in that particular sale. It's not for the faint of heart, and you hear no a lot more than you hear yes, and it's something that like you said. So first impressions absolutely matter.
Yeah, you get your dick kicked in a lot.
For sure. So so that was I wanted to get some thoughts on you, because I know that you have a particularly close relationship with Michael, and I find him to be a fascinating figure, like you said.
Very fascinating. I don't know if I ever taught him anything. You'd have to ask him that question.
I will if I ever get next time I talk to him, I definitely will. I'll definitely throw it back on him based on tonight's interview. So I think that'll be fun to ask Michael that. The like you said, though, calculating individual, very calculating, but just an instantly likable person.
Yeah,
so now
that it just made me realize he's calculating, but he is genuine. It's not,
absolutely.
It's not calculating in a disingenuous way like a politician might be. He's just disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
In I should say more disciplined in certain areas than I am.
Yeah, he's certainly not twisting his mustache and hatching a plan to take over the world, or at least that we know of yet. So, but at least not in an evil way. But so to fast forward a little bit to 6 months ago, in the history of Andrew Brennan, you take over the director of operations for the United States for Patoro Cigars, or Patoro AG. Now, for those of you who don't know Patoro, you really should check it out. I'm smoking the Series P right now. They have a few different SKUs. They've been around since 2001, and they launched into the U.S. about 4 years ago. And they've in fact, Michael's Tobacco, where I work on the retail side, was the first account in Texas to carry Patoro cigars. And since then, that number has grown. Obviously, it's been met with some great success. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be, Andrew. How did you go? How did you come to be the director of U.S. operations for Patoro?
When I first started having these conversations with Patoro, they wanted the title was a brand manager, and I have mixed feelings about the title brand manager in our industry. And I'm going to do what Herklots would do, and I'm going to keep those opinions to myself in this situation, because there are people with that title who I like and respect. So I just think the title is weird. But when I left Nat Sherman, I stayed at home and I thought I was going to be done with the cigar industry. I was ready to ride off into the sunset like John Wayne. And I was having an awful lot of fun with my wife and 2 kids, who are both ABs, by the way. I fucked up and bought 2 puppies one day, which my wife was not happy about. But I'm good friends with Tom Lazuka of Asylum and CLE. very good friends. He's my big brother in a lot of ways. He's not just my big brother, but he's also bigger than me. He's a lot heavier. And if he was here right now, he would go like this. Nice hair, Andrew, because Tommy has got a beautiful head of hair.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got magnificent hair.
It's the one thing he's got on me, so I'll give it to him. And he probably kick my ass at any given point in time he wants. He's a big boy.
Well, I think anyone from Detroit can just like automatically win a fight no matter what. So
let's not go too far. Let's not go too far.
Not from Detroit. Not any. We're not talking about the Lions now. Okay, like we're talking about just from Detroit.
But he called me and started talking to me about the Patoro brand and what they wanted to do with it, because CLE is the U.S. distributor of the Patoro line. So I met with Patrik Martin, one of the owners, the original owner in 2001. He was with Davidoff for about 30 years prior to that, or 20 years. He started his own line. It's been bouncing around very large in Switzerland, now into Germany and all over Europe. Pablo Richards joined the company. His grandfather was Dr. Schneider of Davidoff. He joined the company about 4 years ago, and he decided to bring it back into the U.S. That's when they connected with CLE. But neither one of them are able to be in the United States as much as they would like to be or need to be. So Tom and Christian and Pablo and Patrik got together. They had a conversation about me. I met with all four of them, and they thought it would be a good idea for both parties for me to come on board and work with the CLE sales team and go from there.
And you made a very smart move. The first stop you did on your tour as the director.
I'm curious what you're going to say.
Oh, the first stop you made on as the director of operations for the U.S. for Patoro was at Michael's Tobacco of Euless. So I mean, you couldn't go wrong from there.
Come on, smartest move. Go to Texas.
Absolutely. So okay, so now you're so it's really interesting to think about Patoro in that sense, because you guys have great relationships, the lineage, the heritage, like you just mentioned, Dr. Ernst Schneider's son, Patrik Martin, who was with Davidoff for almost 3 decades. And you have that kind of a foundation. Plus your cigars are being manufactured in my opinion, one of the hottest cigar factories out there right now, the De Los Reyes factory. And then you're distributed by one of again, in my opinion, one of the most underrated distributors out there with CLE. Christian Aroa is producing amazing cigars. Tom, his partnerships are legendary, but his reach with the distribution also incredible. So you're working with all these iconic and fantastic individuals, and you're kind of thrown into the center of it. What has been the biggest challenge so far? Again, we're only 6 months in here, but what's been the biggest challenge so far, being kind of in the middle of all that?
Being in the middle of all that? The biggest challenge is the Patoro brand is so small in the U.S. It's just not known, right? So the consumers are unaware of it. So it's taking a lot of time. I don't mean taking a lot of time. For me, the way I look at it is I need to spend a lot of time with the consumers, sitting with them, telling them the story. Pablo and Patrik have made a lot of trips over here over the last couple of years, but they're obviously, if they're in Texas, they're not here, right? So when people sit down and talk with Pablo or talk with Patrik, they understand the brand, they understand the passion behind it. The cigars are excellent. The story really makes sense to them. So the biggest challenge is not enough people have heard that story. Not enough people have experienced Patoro. So in working with the CLE sales team, the biggest challenge is refreshing the sales rep about Patoro just as much as the consumers. Much like when a broker walks in there, you know, if they have brand A, brand B, brand C, but they're paid by A and B mostly, and you're D or E, it's going to take a while before they mention your brand. You know, so obviously, I think the CLE salesperson, even though they are our sales reps, the consumers and the retailers, when they see that face, they think of Asylum or CLE. That consistent face isn't being connected with Patoro. And I think a lot of people don't understand that CLE and Asylum are our distributor of Patoro. You know, so I think just the biggest challenge has been getting that consistent message out there that they are our sales reps. You know, when you can put a sales rep face with a brand, I think you're going to do a lot better off. You know, and the more that their sales reps are talking about Patoro, the more that I'm out there talking about Patoro, the more that consumers will be asking for it and be aware of it and be exposed to that story.
So, and you might feel this exact same way, Andrew, but I think that the advantage that Patoro has of being even in that position that you mentioned, maybe D, E, C, D, E, that kind of that third, fourth, or fifth level on the list of the CLA sales reps. What I think, and again, you might feel similarly, is that Patoro fills a gap in their portfolio that CLE has created. Now, CLE certainly has its share of more mild, sophisticated smokes, but Patoro really elevates that. They're elevated cigars in the more milder to medium body range, and Asylum and CLE, you know, are kind of on the upper echelon of medium to full bodied cigars for the most part. Like I said, they do make mild cigars. That's without question. But
all over, but you know, they produce and manufacture primarily in Honduras, obviously in Christian's factory, and then Christian and Tom's factory, and then they've over the last couple of years been doing more and more with Nicaraguan stuff out of Nicaragua. So I think the Patoro brand fills a void. You know, they do have that Dominican offering now with Patoro. But it does separate itself in terms of price, you know, from the CLE stuff that's more moderate priced and the Asylum, which is a little lower. For the most part, they have cigars all over. They actually have a huge portfolio. I was, when I joined the company, I was really amazed to see how actually large their reach was.
Oh gosh, it's gotten huge. It's massive.
They have something for everyone. But Patoro does fill a void there, you know, especially if you have somebody that says, man, I really like those Dominican cigars, you know, Patoro is obviously that for them.
So as we start a new year here in just a few short weeks in 2019, what are some of the things that we can see from your side, you know, Director of U.S. Operations? What can we see, or what can we come to expect from Patoro going forward here in the near future?
I think what you're going to see, what can I say? What I would like to do is right now we have three main offerings: our Series P, the Brazil line, which has a green band, and then the Gran Añejo, which I'm smoking. We have 3 or 4 other lines that are distributed on a smaller scale in Europe.
The Platinum, the Heritage, or the Vintage rather, and then
the Platino, the XO line,
the XO. Okay.
And you know, we have had those in the U.S. here and there on limited times. I want to see more of those in more shops. I would like, you know, Patoro has a really amazing cigar lounge in Switzerland. I mean, amazing. Big time chef, big time wines. You know, it's really it's really a hip pinnacle type lifestyle. This lounge, I want to bring that lounge experience to the U.S. You know, I want people to somehow see that and feel that, and there's different ways we could do that with social media and things like what we're doing right now. You know, even though it's 5 a.m. in Switzerland, you know, maybe we can get Patrick and Pablo to do some stuff like this from the lounge. But I'd like to bring more of that Patoro feel into the industry, not just obviously our cigars, but you know, more of the branding and philosophy behind the brand.
I mean, that would be absolutely huge. The cigars that we'd mentioned that you said have been sporadically been placed here and there, special and limited occasions and stuff. Michael's has carried all of them at one point or another, and we do carry the 3 core lines as you mentioned, and with tremendous success. It's been a very successful brand for us, and it's a cigar, like you said, that we mentioned earlier, kind of really fills the gap in a lot of different ways. It's a more elevated cigar, as I mentioned, and I love using Mike Peacock's description of the Series P when he talks about it. He says it's a cigar that makes you sit down and think in a really good way. And so it's not a golf course cigar. It's not a mow your lawn cigar. This is a cigar meant to be enjoyed and to sit down and really consider it. And that's what I really love about it in particular. Love the Bellicoso for the Brazil, and the red label as well is phenomenal too. But
write that down.
You're write it down. Fantastic.
But I'm not going to give Mike any credit for it. That makes you think.
It's a great line, and it really works because like people are like, what, like you said, it's a smaller company. A lot of folks, even who smoke cigars, have it.
Because I'm pretty sure that I said that to Mike Peacock years ago, and he's just taking my line and applying it to Series P.
Sounds good. I'll leave that between you and Mike, sir.
Don't tell him I'm afraid of him.
Mike's a tremendous retailer and a great guy, and the fact that he's behind your cigar, is a great place to sit, for a person in your position for sure. You talked about getting in front of the consumers more and everything. Are you going to be traveling more extensively in 2019? Are you going to be building up the sales force in a way to facilitate that so that they'll be moving a lot?
I will be I don't know how I could travel more. I will be out there more in some ways. I think we have a tendency in this industry to sometimes focus like a shotgun more on a blanket territory, as opposed to more like a sniper on certain accounts in that territory and then move on. And, I've thought a lot about focusing more on specific accounts in a territory and then moving on. Meaning, instead of just being in DFW for a week, maybe I'm in DFW for a day and a half, and then I'm in Arizona for a day and a half, and then I'm in Chicago for a day. There's a little more cost, I suppose, in terms of airfare, maybe with that. But I think I've put a lot of thought in a more targeted approach. So I don't want to say I'm going to be traveling more, but I'm going to travel differently. Maybe a little, in my opinion, a little more smartly. What was the other part of that question?
Well, I'm kind of going to correct myself mid-sentence here, but building up a sales force. But
we talked about hiring some direct sales reps for Patoro. Maybe in markets where CLE is underutilized or not overly represented. They do use a lot of brokers I don't want to say a lot of brokers, but they use a good handful of brokers. And some are fabulous, and some, and a lot of people are great for different brands, but sometimes brokers who are great for brand A aren't great for brand B.
Sure.
So there will probably be some sales rep changes in 2019.
I mean, you said it yourself earlier. There are great brokers out there, and that's not to take anything away from them. But your in-house sales guy is going to be focused on Patoro. That's going to be their sole focus and their sole.
Absolutely. I have not met a broker I've not met a broker that I didn't like. I've met a lot of sales reps that I didn't like. Right. So I'm not suggesting that brokers are bad people. I'm not suggesting anything. I think in today's cigar industry, it's very hard to be a very functional broker. And there's a good handful out there that are really good at it. I mean, they've been doing some amazing stuff for a lot of brands. But it's hard for a broker because, to a point, if you build it up too much, you lose the brand, right? It's a tough side of this business.
Absolutely. So before I let you go, Andrew, I gotta say that I don't know what's going on with the Bears game behind you, but it's hard not to notice the amazing decor that you have behind you in your home office there. Looks like you've got some pretty iconic photos of the Rat Pack.
I do.
And a pretty impressive humidor behind there. So when I'm assuming it's family time, but after family time has been taken care of, the little time that you do spend at home, what does Andrew Brennan like to do?
I like to spend every minute I have at home with my wife and children.
Well, that's what I said. I knew that was the number one answer, because that's my answer too.
Dude, my wife,
and not because my wife is listening right now either. I just want to say that. So
they're probably looking at me through the door or something. I spend a lot of time with my wife and kids, no doubt. I was lucky enough to coach my son in baseball and football this last year, and that was really special. My daughter is she put me through the ringer today, but she is amazing. I spent a lot of time with Mrs. AB, or Katie. But I spent a lot of time down here. I mean, it's 10:28. I mean, they're all sleeping right now. My family goes to bed early. We wake up early. I go to bed late and I wake up early. So I'm usually down here smoking a cigar or reading a book. I read a lot. I think a lot. I usually send angry text out at night. You can ask a lot of my friends in the cigar industry. But I'll show you around the office.
Oh, here we go. We got the tour.
I can do this. So I don't know what it looks like, but those are the doors. This right there is my hole-in-one. I do like to play golf when I have the chance.
There you go.
This guy up here, some people might know. That
Looks
is
familiar.
Ferraro. He ran Ashton sales team for many, many years. He has a special place in my life. And I don't know what you'll be able to see if I do this. Some World Series champion Cubs hats. Maybe I could do it this way. There's some pictures up there of my cigar group.
There's you and Lido.
That was a cool picture I took of Lido.
That's really awesome.
Way before, I think that was the first day I met him.
Oh, wow.
He walked up to me and said, hi, are you Andrew? Can you go to Walgreens and buy me some cold medicine? But I really like that picture because of the smoke, and then the hat was there. It was cool. There's me and my fat big brother. I can't tell who that is. Oh, that's Momo, Justin Richards. He ordered a porterhouse steak for like 14 people compared to my 12-ounce steak.
You and Tony Gomez.
Tony and Herklots flipping me off. They were in the DR and I wasn't. And there's a third middle finger there, which is Lito's.
Terrific. A lot of love there. A lot of love in that picture.
That was a special dinner right there. That's Alex from Ashton. He's the local Chicago sales rep. And then Phil and Joel from Uptown in Chicago. That was dinner we had the night that they purchased Uptown from Diane. I can't tell who that is. Oh, that was at Thor's house with Big Omar there.
Thor Nelson and Omar DeFrias of Fratello Cigars and Thor of Cigar Press Magazine. So
yeah, they're there. That's Phil from Uptown Cigar holding one of Bill Paley's Emmys.
There you go. And there's Matt Booth.
Me and Mr. Booth have had some times over the years. Who's that? Is that that's Jack who hired
Sandlin?
Paul? And Paul, that was actually at Jay Fox's pool. That was a fun night. And then I think this last one is Ike. Here,
now at Drew Estate, was with Nat Sherman and was under Michael for a time. Yeah.
What else do we have over here? We have.
I see a lot of Frank Sinatra. I'm assuming you're a fan. So.
I'm a big Frank fan.
Old Blue Eyes.
We have. I've read all those books at some time. There's my humidor it's a little low right now. I usually have one or two cigar parties a year where the sales reps for different companies come over and we play poker. They fill my humidor and I feed them and get them drunk. There's a picture of Mr. Herklotz and myself, and that's actually at Camp David.
I used that photo for the promotion of this interview. I cropped out Michael just for the sake of getting.
Yeah, I
should
you in there, but out of this picture too. It would look.
Camp David's a beautiful place, man. If anyone ever gets the opportunity to go there in Dominican, that is a gorgeous view, and it's even more stunning in real life.
It's pretty amazing. I've had a lot of special times there. The thing is, it's like 85 degrees and the fucker's wearing a scarf. Yeah, so it's my own little space. I've got
your own little slice of heaven
over here. I collect putters. So that's that. Oh, there's my man Jimmy Schaefer. I cannot give you a picture tour of my office without showing you Jimmy Schaefer. He is the Nat Sherman guy in New York, New Jersey, a few other places. He is a very, very special cat. We got Nestor Miranda right there.
I think every cigar shop in America has that bobblehead of Nestor. I'm pretty sure.
Are they actually a cigar shop?
I think that's a qualifying. Do you have a Nestor Miranda bobblehead? No. Okay, then you're not a cigar shop. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good quality for sure.
Of kids. This is my AB that I stare at. This is see if you could see that ashtray right there.
Cowgirl with the ashtray is actually on top of her hat. That's pretty interesting. What is that, a brand or is that an antique?
My man Phil from Uptown made me this.
Oh, awesome.
He knows that I'm a fan of the pinup blondes. So he saw that and kept it, and he knows that my office is red down here. So he thought that would be a nice thing, and it was.
Perfect.
So that's that. Y'all got a fucked up tour of my office.
A lot of history in that room. A lot of history in that room, and it's absolutely fantastic. We're wrap things up. Our first tour here on ELOSOFUMAR Takes of the venue in which our guest is coming to us from. So um, I hope to one day actually grace that place personally myself, Andrew. It looks like an awesome place to hang out and have cigars. So
Let me know. You're more than welcome.
well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Kind of walked you into that, forcing you to invite me, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So, thank you, sir. I'm much obliged to you, and obliged to you for your time this evening.
I would have said that too.
Obliged to you for your time this evening, and everyone out there. Thank you so much for all your time this evening, all your likes, shares, and comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, as well as follow us on Facebook at ELOSOFUMAR, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ELOSOFUMAR as well. This will wrap up our 55th take. We were live with Mr. Andrew Brennan of Patoro Cigars, the Director of Operations for the United States. And look for Patoro Cigars in your local humidor. And if it's not, tell them to give Andrew a call and put it in there, because you will be better served to have Patoro Cigars in your humidor. Trust me, I smoke them all the time. They are fantastic, and they've got a great story behind them as well. So tune in next week for our 56th take. We'll be coming to you live. We'll be having our guest will be Jack Hayer of Cigar Dojo fame. It'll be absolutely fantastic. But until then, we appreciate everyone out there for all of your time. I'm Bear Duplessis, live from the Casa Cueva studios of Euless, Texas. This was our 55th take. Andrew Brennan was our guest. And as always, everyone, we'll see you next time.